All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, and welcome to the 8th episode of BPOC's Dreaming of a New Collections Management System. As many of you already know, my name is Alex Kron, and I am BPOC's Digital Operations and Collections Information Analyst. Here with me today, we have BPOC's Consulting Executive Advisor, Neal Stimler, and BPOC's CEO, Nik Honeysett, as my co-hosts. So now, in today's episode, we have Dan Rael and Howard Burrows from CatalogIt, who are here to share with us how they address the difficulty of getting data in and out, support a better understanding of cloud environments, pros, cons, and misunderstandings, and how their platform works to capture the context of objects, i.e. the stories around the object, not just their data, and promote internal, external discoverability across collections. Before I introduce our speakers, I wanted to mention that we will open our discussion up for a Q&A at the end. So please put any questions that you have in the Q&A section and feel free to comment and discuss in the chat throughout the presentation today. So today's session will be recorded, and if you're having difficulty with the transcription services, please reach out to me. So now I'm going to go ahead and introduce Dan and Howard. Dan is one of the founders of CatalogIt and leads the sales and support and business sides of the company. He studied anthropology, archaeology, and geology in college. Wow, that's a lot. And while studying at the University of New Mexico, he worked in the collections at the Maxwell Museum of Anthropology. He then spent a number of years as an archaeologist for the U.S. Forest Service in California on the El Dorado and Stanislaus. Ooh, I'm totally mispronouncing that, I apologize. National Forest. Thank you, Dan. Following a stint as a volunteer in the U.S. Peace Corps in rural Eastern Paraguay, Dan moved into the financial services world and ultimately led the brokerage side of a small investment company in San Francisco. Dan's been a collector of things pretty much his whole life, from seashells to stamps and coins, and later of ethnographic art. He is delighted to be deeply connected with and contributing to the history, culture, and art world through his work at CatalogIt. Next, we have Howard Burrows. He is the technical founder of CatalogIt with over 30 years of experience developing software, creating value, and building products. He brings a unique perspective to the space coming from a large-scale consumer electronics catalog management perspective from his time at CNET and CBS Interactive, rather than a museum collections management perspective. To him, the practice of data modeling, exploration, management, and sharing is anchored in the same fundamentals. Howard has worked with both small startups and large enterprise companies and has experience with most aspects of building, shipping, and supporting software products. He cares deeply about the user experience and making things simple, intuitive, and delightful to use at scale. He's thrilled to be applying his experience to the challenges of cataloging diverse, complex, and intricate objects, capturing their stories, and making it so they can be shared with the world. He also has a degree in mathematics and computers. Thank you both for being here today with us, and now I'm going to hand it over to you.
All right, well, good morning, everybody. I guess really it's good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you're located, seeing that we're all around the world. As Alex said, I'm Howard. And first, I just want to say thank you, Alex, and to the entire BPOC staff for hosting this series and for inviting us to attend and participate. We've really enjoyed the previous sessions, and we hope the knowledge and experience that we share today with you, you find useful and beneficial as you think about dreaming of a new CMS. And with that, let's just dive right in. So in the spirit of dreaming of a new CMS, we want you to imagine loving your CMS. We recognize that you spend many hours weekly in your CMS. It should be fun, satisfying, and delightful to use. It's our mission to not be the CMS that you must use, but to be the CMS that you want to use. And with that, who are we? We're relatively new to the space. We are a distributed team with a diverse set of backgrounds. We think in terms of structured documents and graphs. which is a different perspective from the kind of the typical LAMP-WAMP stacks that dominate the space. We use ontologies to help us navigate and interpret the world. And we really think in terms of mobile first. Mobile is hard. We all have these, wonderful things that we, have in our world, in our hands. We recognize that the world has not only gone digital, but it's gone mobile. These are very powerful devices that deliver exceptional experiences. They're with us all the time, and they're an outstanding companion to your CMS. It's your data. We just want to help you use it and love it. We don't want you to be beholden to our platform or feel trapped. We want to really compete on ability. And we don't want to be an impediment to you moving your data to another platform if what we're delivering isn't servicing you well. And we have a deep respect for the industry standards, such as Spectrum for archival stuff, DAX and DIRCs and things of that nature. Dan?
Sure. So where did we come from? So as Alex kind of mentioned, Howard and I have fairly diverse backgrounds. Howard's very much in the tech sphere, and I was I spent a lot of my career in the anthropology, archaeology world, and then off into finance. But we've also got, besides the two of us, the rest of our team are solid museum background people. So between all of us, we've put together, I think, a really beautiful product here. So we started the process here thinking that we're building something really for private collectors. It was a large collection of indigenous art that we initially were kind of targeting towards the ability to document. And then as we started to grow, we've started accepting some early access users, first private collectors, but the word started to spread quickly, and we actually ended up with some early access museum users, and that kind of pulled us into that direction. We saw what a real dearth there was for modern, intuitive technology in that space. We had our first commit to GitHub in June 8th of 2015. We began selling the product at the beginning of 2019. Our first subscription was February 2019, and we've grown really rapidly ever since, with clients now in 29 countries. So we have spread quickly.
All right. So what is our vision and philosophy? Our vision is really to deliver a cost-effective, high-quality, and comprehensive platform for managing, publishing, and exploring collections. We, really believe in building a semantically rich platform that delivers flexibility and enables connectedness both within and between collections and different object types. We're big believers in putting your collections to work. Documentation, management, publishing, sharing, and exploring, in our minds, are all equally important aspects to a CMS. And we really want to help empower organizations with tools to deliver experiences that users have come to expect. Like I said previously, the world has gone digital, mobile, and augmented. Users expect different experiences and ways of exploring the world today, and we really want to help you deliver on that.
Howard, I want to emphasize again this point about mobile first, and could you tell us more, Dan, as well, philosophically, why that's so important and some practical reasons as to why that matters, especially to people like collections managers and registrars and curators who are working with collections personally every day?
Sure, Neal. Well, to start with, when we started getting going, we had this kind of vision of like, it should be as easy to create a new entry in your CMS as it is to create a post on Instagram. Humans are very, visually oriented. Our eyes and our vision are very strong receptors. And so we really wanted to create a visual experience. But museums have rooms all over the place. They have storage rooms, and there's a lot of activity that needs to happen kind of on the go. And so you need to be able to do an inventory from your hand. You need to be able to do a condition report from your hand. And so we really felt that the combination of these high quality cameras in the phone with being on the go was really kind of a magic combination in conjunction with the human just really kind of resonating with kind of a visual first experience, which we've really delivered with CatalogIt.
Yeah, that accessibility is really just unbelievably important. We've only seen more and more examples of how important that accessibility is. That the ability to use a phone. One of our early clients had when we were presenting to them, they were just blown away by the idea that they could have a docent working up in the gallery on a Sunday when all the offices are closed, and somebody could come in and ask a question, and she could just open up her phone and find the answer. To them, that was like just mind-blowing, you know.
That's great. Thanks for that additional context.
Sure.
All right, with that brief introduction behind us, the agenda and discussion items for the remainder of this topic, or for the remainder of the webinar, are really, the following. We just want to kind of share our knowledge, experience, and opinions and tips on, capturing the context of objects, better enabling discoverability of your collections, better understanding cloud environments, and getting your data in and out. We figured, halfway through these discussion items, we'll take a brief pause and give you a quick demo of CatalogIt, and really show you how CatalogIt facilitates what we're discussing here today. With that, let's dive right into capturing the context of objects. Dan?
Okay, so first of all, let's move to the next one. So what is the context? So the context is really it's the object itself, but it's also all these stories and all these connections that the object has. So this example here, this is just a nice little Craftsman lamp. It's you can kind of see what it is. It's a neat example of a Craftsman lamp, but we start to learn a little bit more about it here. It's got a real story. So we know who the manufacturer was. It was this company, W.B. Brown Lamp Company. W.B. Brown Company. They were actually a major manufacturer of arts and crafts, furniture, and lighting from 1906 to 1923. So that starts to enrich the story of this lamp. Okay, so now we start to know a little bit more about it. We know where it was made and when it was made. And then we also know that this lamp was purchased by this person, Wesley Adams. He bought it actually via mail order in 1913 and had it shipped from Indiana out to his home in California. That adds much more richness. It adds more depth to the story of this little lamp here. And then it sat on his desk for his entire life, almost 50, 60 years. It sat on his desk in his home in Oakland, California. What other things did that lamp connect to? What other things does he connect to? So we know that Wesley Adams actually is related to a whole series of other items within our collections. He's got connections to all kinds of other things, other records within our collections. And we'll demonstrate how this works when we get a little bit further on into catalog. We'll show you a little bit more about how this works. But this lamp all of a sudden has got connections all over the place. So why is it important? Well, first of all, it's often not just the story of the item itself, but it's those related stories that make the object important. Who made it? When was it made? What was it used? How did it get to be where it is today? So those stories are what engages people, and it helps them they can relate to that object by one of the object's many stories here. So again, examples of what kinds of things that make up the context, the related people, the places, the events, the techniques, the provenance. I think one of the things that's also important to capture is interpretive labels. All the labels that you've used to describe that thing over time, each one of those are under a different context. So keep track of all that different text. Those help you narrate that the stories that relate to that item here. So when we get a little bit further on here, we'll jump into the app itself and we'll explore a little bit about how that works.
Dan, just a question about labels for a second.
Sure.
As you said, there's so many that are used, right? Or interpretive text for publication, for this exhibition, for this pamphlet. Can you tell us a little bit more how CatalogIt organizes those different descriptive texts and makes them searchable and discoverable if you want to repurpose them or deploy them for something else, like maybe say a mobile app or your website?
Sure. So CatalogIt has lots of places where you can have sort of repeating sets of data, and one of them is to capture those interpretive labels. So there's a field to describe what type of a label is it. So for instance, it could be just a technique label. So how is this lamp made? How is that glass slag made, and how are these assembled in this big factory here? So there's that. But then there's also maybe the story of the item itself. So that how this lamp came to be to Wesley Adams and what did he use it for? So that's a whole different label. So with CatalogIt, you describe, you could set the type of label that it is and include that text, and then the type of the next label and include that text. It keeps them all there organized for you and always available. So
that's great. Thanks.
And so, finding those is really a combination of how they're tagged, as Dan mentioned. Is it a researcher note? Is it a technique note? And a full text search for something, that's very textually based like that. All right, with the context of objects explored a little bit, our next topic of discussion is really, enabling better internal and external discoverability. We see two big branches to this. One being, rich semantic data, metadata, and controlled vocabularies. The second being, web publishing and APIs. So let's drill into the first, which is what we call ontologies and metadata. So what do we mean by ontologies to start with? Ontologies are schemas that declare semantic structure to to your data and allow you to represent it, interpret it, and navigate it in a much more richly and high fidelity manner. We view ontologies as your friends. Ontologies enable a much more flexible architecture for handling a diverse set of objects. And ontologies encode knowledge and concepts around a specific subject area or domain. Users greatly benefit from ontologies because the domain-specific detail, structure, and defaults are encoded into them. Each ontology speaks the language of the item being cataloged, leading to higher fidelity cataloging experience, less misuse of fields, and more consistent data. When I say less misuse of fields, when you have a least common denominator approach to your fields, people are trying to shoehorn things that are really important to them into specific fields that weren't necessarily intended to that. Maybe you've got 20 user-defined fields, and so you're trying to shoehorn things into it. But if you have a really diverse set of objects that you're trying to catalog, 20 user-defined fields isn't going to really serve you very well for too long. Some examples here, we have two examples of what we mean. We have a coil basket details on the left and clothing, dress, costume details on the right. And I'm not going to go through them in detail, but you can see that in the coil basket detail, we're talking in terms of stitch count, coil count, start type, and things like that. In the case of dress, clothing, costume details, we're talking about the article of clothing. Is this a pair of pants? Is it a shirt? Is it a dress? Is it a hat? The sex, is it male, female, size, and then we get into fabric details and things like that. So each ontology carries the specific details that are appropriate for that domain of expertise. We believe that when a community of collections speaks the same ontology, it creates many new opportunities for much richer connectedness, exploration, and discovery. But ontologies aren't the holy grail in and of themselves. So we all speak English, let's say, but there are a lot of variances in terms of how we regional dialects and regional variances. And that's where we see controlled vocabularies really lending a big helping hand. Let's take the example here in this picture of Da Vinci. Some collections may refer to him as Leonardo da Vinci. Other collections may refer to him as Da Vinci, Leonardo. Yet others may simply refer to him as Da Vinci. So as humans, we can easily distinguish between them. And a good full text search engine will find them as well. But a full text search is going to result in a lot of noise. When you throw a structured search at it, your results can be really disappointing. And that's where we find controlled vocabularies really coming to, I wouldn't say to the rescue, but they really lend a helping hand because they provide that consistency and normalization in terms of how we refer to things. So things like the Getty ULAN, the Getty AET, they provide wonderful consistency in terms of how we refer to Da Vinci. And so the combination of controlled vocabularies and ontologies, we find, really provide a lot of wonderful possibilities in terms of representing the data, exploring it, navigating it, and wonderful consistency there. The next big branch of discoverability really has to do with web publishing and APIs. So selectively, publishing your content to the web is essential these days. If you don't have a presence on the web, you're never going to be discoverable in this day and age. But just throwing your stuff out on the web isn't really sufficient. You need to ensure that you have really good best practices around SEO. So when you do a Google search, your content is actually discoverable. In addition to just being on the web today, we have these things known as Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and they've really broadened the reach of discoverability. So you really need to think of having rich open graph tag support as well, so that you can share that content onto those platforms and really broaden the reach of your content and its potential for discoverability. But being on the web is only a part of it. APIs are a big component in our digital services ecosystem today. So your CMS is really going to be, one cog in this big wheel of what we refer to as the digital services ecosystem. So having, rich APIs that allow it to participate with all these other services are really critical. And along with that, a lot of institutions don't have the technical expertise to easily get this onto their own website. And that's where plugins and prepackaged components really are very important. So we offer WordPress plugins and iframe components that allow the non-technical people to easily get their CMS content integrated into their website. And in addition to that, being able to export your data to standard metadata formats like Dublin Core, the OAC and Online Archive of California is what OAC stands for. And those similar formats are really important. It's really critical that you be able to get your data out in standard and consistent formats and share it and integrate it with these other components in the world.
Howard, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges for people trying to take on the extension of their collections, right, beyond the hosting of it on their own website, which you mentioned is supported in many ways? Can you give some examples, Howard and Dan, of how you've helped those institutions make these transactional relationships with either third parties or social media integrations? How are you helping them really empower the collections and extend beyond?
So, first, kind of like as I previously mentioned, we have WordPress plugins that allow you to easily integrate this into a WordPress website. We have iframe components that allow you to easily integrate it into pretty much any website that can host an iframe, and pretty much any website can host an iframe. And then we provide rich means for exporting the data, so you can get it out of the CMS and take it somewhere else. We really view that a lot of the work that is going to happen with your CMS, with the data that's in your CMS, is actually going to happen outside of the CMS.
And Neal, when I'll in my demo here, in in fact, coming up here in a second here, I'll show. I mean, one of the things we do is help small institutions, particularly, get their stuff out there, because many of them have we have plenty of clients. I mean, plenty of clients that actually have big, beautiful websites, but we also have a lot of clients that really their Facebook page is their website. So by giving them the ability to publish their stuff out to the web is already a huge, window out into the world to allow the world to see them and them to see the world. So that kind of discoverability.
That's a great example, Dan. Thank you. Thanks, Howard.
Yes. All right, with that, let's take a quick pause and a quick demo of CatalogIt and some of the concepts we've been talking about, showing you how we are helping to facilitate some of this.
Howard, while you're doing that, there's a question in the chat about searching through the system, filtering and saving specific search criteria. So you might want to include that.
Okay. Let me see if I can pull up.
Do you want me to go back, Howard, or you want to?
No, go ahead, and we'll come back to that after the demo, Dan, and I'll read the chat question.
Are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So folks, I'm just going to go very quickly here because I'm not going to give a full-blown demo of Catalog, but just give you a quick idea of what we're looking at here. So this is what CatalogIt looks like. We're in a screen called All Entries. When you first log into your CatalogIt account, you actually come to a screen like this with everything you've got. So this is just a little small demo account that we've got here with about 100 items in it, but we have clients with 100,000 items. And if you wanted to, you could actually scroll through 100,000 items here, but you're more likely going to use your search functions, and to be able to search across everything is extremely handy and useful here. So besides all entries, you can actually subdivide your collection into whatever kinds of groups of items you want to here. Pardon me here. When I click on my main menu here, you can see what I mean by that. I've got a whole series of other folders here, and you can put items in as many folders as they want. You can see I've organized mine based some of them on the type of item that they are, and some based on maybe workflow. So it's just a great way of organizing and aggregating groups of items in your collections here. And some of these, you see a little symbol in here with a little globe in them. Hopefully you can see that in the share. Those are folders I'm publishing out to the internet. So in CatalogIt, you're actually publishing things at the level of a folder. And you have complete control, by the way, over what items are shared and what pieces of data are shared. So let me move from there, and we'll just take a quick look at an entry in here in CatalogIt. I'm going to click on, let's say, this one here. Okay, so one of the things I want to point out right off the bat here, you can see there's lots of images. There's no limit to the number of images you attach to an entry in CatalogIt here. But and another thing I want to point before I forget here is that you can select an image here, and now I can actually zoom way in. I can see it in as much detail. I can actually describe the thing, and I could probably pick out all the materials here just by looking at this zoomed in image. But the main thing I want to point out here is this little download cloud. You can actually download your original images are always stored and available to you in CatalogIt. Whatever that original format was, it's there and it's available to you at any time, any place. Let's hop into the entry itself here a little bit more. So there's text fields here to describe the item itself, the story of the item, what it is physically, what its context is. I just have a short context, but these are narrative fields that you can add as much text as you want to, and of course they become searchable. But another way that CatalogIt kind of helps you create the story of the item and all the interconnectedness, not only the story of the item, but the stories of the item are through all these little tags in here in CatalogIt. And these are what we call profile fields in CatalogIt. They're a way of having sort of your own controlled vocabulary and your own system of relationships through your data. I can click on any one of these and see everything else in my collections that relates to whatever that piece of data might be. So for instance, ethnographically, this basket is related to Central California. I can click on that. I have a little description here of what Central California is. I can click on my button here and see that I've got 23 items in my collection that have a connection to this region of Central California. I can actually navigate over into any one of these directly from here. I also see that this is related to a person, Jennifer Bates. I can click on her profile here, see a little bit of information about her, a web link back to her bio on the Alliance for California Traditional Arts. I see she was a founding member of the California Indian Basket Weavers Association. I have a picture of her here cooking acorn. I see that she's related to a couple of items. So there's this little tray, but she's also related to another person in my records, Carson Bates. Actually, he's her son. And here he is with his newborn son and his wife. And I can see that he's related to, here's another basket that he's connected to. And it turns out that he's also a basket weaver. His mother's taught him all kinds of cultural things. So here's actually a picture of him making with a basket that he's made. So that's part of how in CatalogIt, you're creating this web. It's almost a mini sort of a Wikipedia. You can start to connect from this thing to this thing to this thing. And every place, again, that you see these tags, you've got those connections. The place that this was made, Mariposa, California, the lexicon, the nomenclature terms that start to relate it to by those those sort of functional terms out into the greater world. So within your CatalogIt record, you've actually developed a whole web of things almost without thinking about it, just by the relationship of having cataloged it.
Dan and Howard, can you tell us a little bit more in depth about the media functionality of the system? So what kind of files can I store, image files or media files can I store in CatalogIt, and how are they cataloged in description? What level of functionality for media support am I getting here?
Howard, you want to grab that one?
I'm sorry, Neil, can you repeat the question? I was
sure. So can you tell us a bit more about the media support? So is it TIFFs? Is it JPEGs? Can I catalog images or asset types in more description?
Yeah, it's all of that. So we support all of the standard image formats that you might deal with today. So all of your basic GIFs and JPEGs and all that type of stuff. But in addition to that, we fully support raw images, TIFF images, pretty much anything that you want to upload. You can upload Word and Excel documents. You can upload Photoshop documents, even your 3D images and things like that. We don't allow you to preview 3D images currently, and that would be that's kind of a question for the audience. We get a lot of requests for 3D images, and if there's a particular format that you see kind of the industry gravitating towards, we would love to know about it, because one of the holdbacks there is that. But regardless of what you upload, we create a bunch of different derivatives from that for powering the app, because a high-res TIFF or raw image is not going to work on a mobile device for a quick, delightful experience. So we create a large variety of images, derivatives from that in both low-res and high-res formats. So, for your Retina display on an iPhone, we create versions of that for it. But the download button that Dan showed you is always going to download the original image unaltered. We don't strip out any metadata. We don't rotate it, auto-rotate it, or anything like that. Whatever you upload is preserved and available for re-download at any time. So we're very agnostic to the type of media that you can attach to an entry.
That's great. And just to follow up, Howard, we had from Q&A about video. Do you support video formats? So MP4?
Yes, we currently allow you to upload video and audio. We have not evolved to the point that you can play that back in the app yet, but that is on our roadmap, and you can expect that in the not too distant future.
Yeah, but in the meantime, it's right there. It's stored
Yep.
for you. It's right there with the whole description and all the other data about the audio or video
Yeah.
entry. So
Great,
We
thank
feel
you.
it's really important that you kind of keep all of your media together. So even though we don't support video playback in the app today, we think it's very important that you keep it all together and use CatalogIt as kind of your authoritative platform for keeping everything together. We have spent an incredible amount of time trying to stitch things back together when they've been scattered everywhere. They get lost and they get disconnected and out of sync. So keeping everything nicely together is really important.
very key. Yeah.
Mhm.
There's a couple of questions in the chat. One from Jean-Luc. Going back to the object screen, why is nomenclature in the opposite order?
What was that question again, Nick?
Why is nomenclature in the opposite order?
Nomenclature.
In the opposite order.
Oh,
Nomenclature, if you come
opposite
from where I
order,
come from.
Most specific to least specific. I guess I don't have a good response for that. I mean, we can easily flip that around. Nomenclature is an example of what we call a hierarchical profile. And we can declare for each profile type whether we display it most specific to least specific or vice versa. So that's how we felt was appropriate, least specific or most specific to least specific, but there's no real reason why it is in that order.
Okay, and then Mark has a question, which I'll try and do in an American accent. Is the interface for internal or external use or both?
This interface that you're looking at right here, you have to be a logged in user. This is only what you see and your authorized users see. So in just a second here, I'll show you what it looks like when you're sharing out to the world. So this is your internal user face. This is a logged in authorized user of your account. So let me point out just a couple other quick things here. Down here in the bottom corner is this orange plus button. This is where you create a new entry. So when I click on this, I've got a few options. I can grab a photo that I've got saved in my files here. I can attach a PDF or a Word or Excel document. I can create an entry with no media. But I want to point out again, the mobile first aspect of it. Everything we're doing here, you can also do from your phone, and that's Android or Apple. It would give you a fourth option here, and that's to actually use your camera to take a picture of the item. So I'm actually not going to go through the whole process of creating an entry, but one of the first things you do after you select that, after you put your image in there, is select what that classification you want to use it. So you bring in that set of ontologies for documenting that specific type of an item. And then beyond that are all the typical, all the museum fields that you'd expect to do all the, your spectrum processes, for instance. You're going to have fields for capturing any kind of loans, exhibits, condition reporting, conservation, your location. All those things are going to come in from there.
There's an integration question here, Dan,
Sure.
while we're on images. So if you have a separate DAMS, can you integrate with it?
Not currently. We don't have any external integration for a DAMS system. Catalog is 100% powered by APIs. So everything you're seeing here is driven by our API. However, we have not exposed our internal API to the rest of the world yet. We fully intend to do that. But as anyone who's dealt with technology will understand, APIs are a big commitment. And so you don't want to publish your APIs and let the world have access to them until you know that you're ready for really supporting them long-term and committing to them. You can't just kind of change things on the fly once you've published an API. So we do have our public-facing API, but that does not support today an integration with a DAMS system. But once we do publish our full suite of APIs, you would easily be able to use that to integrate with an external DAMS system.
Thanks, Howard. And there's another question from Paul about PDFs before we go on to the kind of external facing. He says, speaking of PDFs, are we still on track to be able to open the file from the derivative image?
Absolutely. We anticipate in early Q4 2022, so not too far down the road, to have full support for being able to view a PDF within the document and fully feed it to the search engine and make it completely searchable and indexable.
I think you meant 2021, right? Not next year.
No, we're in 2021, Dan.
Yeah, but you said 2022.
Q1 of 2022.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Q1 2020. Yeah, so, okay, so let me just get through a few other things here. So again, we talked about, your data is not just trapped in your system. You're going to want to be sharing it. You're using it for all kinds of different things here. So I'm going to hop into one of my folders here and explain how that can work in CatalogIt a little bit. I'm going to just grab this Native American culture grouping of items here. And I'm going to go to these three dots on the upper right-hand corner. That's our actions menu. And I'm going to select print. Now, the print functions in CatalogIt are really sort of ad hoc report writers. And they're really easy to use. So print pages, imagine you've got to get a nice PDF report out to somebody with a bunch of data that you want to share. So it defaults to showing, your primary image. You can actually select all images if you want to include those as well. So here I've got multiple images, but I'm going to go back to my primary. It defaults to showing some basic data, but you select all, and now you've got available every other field that's any place in use over there, and you can add those things to your report. So, I want to include my ethnographic information here as well. So I just select that, and it populates this. And now within 30 or 45 seconds, I've created a nice report of all these items. I could print this to a PDF and email it off, and I've just shared all this information with whoever needed it. So you're not only doing things like that in that nice format, but sometimes you need to extract data that you need to actually use and manipulate the data. So again, from my actions menu here, I'm going to select print and table. And this extracts data in this tabular format. And so the big difference here, it's not the pretty format that's ready for presentation, but here you've got this little cloud here, and you can download this directly to Excel or to a CSV that you can open in Numbers or Google Sheets or anything else like that. I'm going to show up at the very top here. You can actually add a few other things. You can add the primary image, a little thumbnail of that. You can include your QR code, and this is your entry QR code. It's the internal QR code. But if you're publishing the item to the web, you can also include your public QR code if you want to. You can include the URLs if you need those instead. And then down here again, you have some common information, but you can select from all and add anything else you want to your spreadsheet, and you're ready to go. I should also point out here at the bottom that we default to showing in this report when there's repeating data. We default to showing the current data first. So, and that's particularly important for things like location. You generally only care about your current location, but you can select this and actually decide to include all the items, so all repeating data, or only the least recent. I mean, you typically want most, but you can include all if you want to there. So you have a choice of what will appear in these columns. So I'll close that.
And can you tell us a bit about the QR codes you were just showing just for a second, and how you use QR codes in CatalogIt?
Sure. Well, so those QR codes can be handy at all different kinds of things. You can use them for particularly your external ones. Well, actually for both of them. I mean, you imagine these baskets are all carefully packed away and put away in a box up on a shelf, but to have a little label on the outside that has a little, a thumbnail image of that item plus the QR code, you don't have to, I mean, you can just reach your phone up and scan that QR code and it'll open up the record if you have access to the record. And then externally, we have clients that use the external QR codes, the hub QR codes that, it's part of their signage. You have a little short wall label that has got a little bit of information, but if someone's really interested, they scan the QR code and they can open up and read everything else that you've allowed the public to see about that particular item. So QR codes, I think the pandemic has really brought QR codes. They were around for quite a while, but they've really exploded. I think now that everyone knows that you sit down at a table and you order off the QR code that's stuck on the top of the table. So people have become really accustomed to QR codes. They're very handy.
Yeah, and Neal, let me just add a little bit more color to that. All of the identifiers and URLs in CatalogIt are stable. So we can create a QR code for anything in CatalogIt. And we have a big vision of putting our QR codes to work. We want to, imagine, walking into the storeroom, as Dan said, scanning the QR code and just clicking on the inventory button, and you've inventoried the item. Or, you're needing to move an item from one location to another location. You scan the QR code, you click, the move button, it prompts you for a few fields, and then you go on to the next item. So we really want to see QR codes be put to work to make the life of the registrar and the curators and people like that a lot easier.
Excellent. It's especially to Dan's point, something that's many more familiar to us now with the time of COVID. So it's good to see that being revived and used in clever ways here with CatalogIt.
I'm going to show you a little bit about sharing now to the external world. So that's one way of getting your data out and sharing, data, directly with people. These those reporting features, but now sharing with the world.
And before you go there, we wanted to show the classification chooser and creating a new entry,
Sure.
just to kind of drive our point about how rich we are in terms of classifications.
Sure. So I'm going to click my new entry button here. I'm going to click no media. And this opens up this classification chooser. So here are where all these classifications live, and you grab the one that's the most appropriate for the item that you're documenting. You can choose something like art, and you see that there's subclasses of art. I could stop and say this is kind of a generic piece of art, but no, more likely it's a painting, it's a sculpture, it's a work on paper. And you click on that, and there's even additional fields you can drill down further. So this is where you choose what that specific type of the group of ontologies that you want to use to create your entry.
Excellent. So we call these classifications for the end user, but they are fully powered by OWL ontologies. And OWL stands for the Web Ontology Language. And OWL is under the Semantic Web umbrella, right alongside RDF and linked data. So it's all part of kind of the semantic world, semantic web world. We're big proponents of the semantic web, and the underpinnings of CatalogIt are all kind of rooted in semantic technologies.
Yeah. So I want to make sure we have a little bit of time to talk about sharing now with the external world. So
just before you do that, Dan, there's
Sure.
one still question around searching, filtering, and saving.
Yeah, so I can answer that real quick. So you can search the system at pretty much any level. You can search across all items in your collection, or you can search within a specific folder. The ability to filter, which we call full text search, is going to surface in the app in the next few weeks. For any existing CatalogIt users out there today, we'd be happy to opt you into full text search. It's really delightful and fun to use. And in terms of saving specific search criteria, we will allow you to save your searches right alongside of saving the configuration for report or something that you're going to export. So we recognize that there are a lot of queries that you're going to need to do repeatedly in the system. And so being able to save those is really kind of essential.
all right.
Great. Rupert has a couple of semantic questions. Just talking about it a little bit more, and then he's asking if the data is stored as triples or a little bit more hybrid.
Yeah, those are great questions. So number one, in terms of the semantic underpinnings, I spent a good chunk of my career at CBS Interactive in the cataloging team, and I got really exposed to all things open source, ontology, taxonomies, and all that type of stuff. And I really felt that the web ontology language would be a wonderful combination for, at the time, ethnographic art, because it's very rich in detail and relationships and techniques and materials and all that type of stuff. In terms of a triple store, we use a triple store to power parts of the app, but triple stores are not great really for transactional read-write stuff. They're wonderful for read-only type of uses. And so we've kind of created this hybrid model where we pull things out of a triple store and then we convert it into a JSON representation to really power the app. And JSON stands for JavaScript serialized object notation, and it's a very wonderful match for the front end technology. So it really minimizes the amount of work that we need to do on the front end in order to bring everything to life. But everything you're seeing in CatalogIt is 100% driven by the ontologies. It doesn't matter whether you're searching for something or whether you're viewing the view form for something or editing or putting together a report. Everything is driven from the ontology. So that creates some initial friction in terms of getting everything going. But once you get it going and you have the core kind of technology in place, it really kind of opens the door for like really rich experiences and moving very rapidly with various things. So, in terms of semantic technologies, we're very hybrid, but in terms of being able to export and talk the semantic world, it's a very natural fit for us because, everything in our world is very much tied to that.
Just to follow, Rupert has a follow-up question about CDOC, CRM. Is that what you're using?
I'm not familiar with CDOC CRM. So yeah, we are not using that.
Okay, that was easily. And then Lenore has a question. What type of database?
We run on Postgres, which is an open source relational database. So we're very much a hybrid model in terms of, as I said, very hybrid in terms of triple story traditional structures. We felt a little nervous early on, kind of just wholesale going after a graph database, even though we very much view the world as a graph and we're very graph oriented. So Postgres has some incredible functionality for supporting graphs and that type of stuff. And so we store everything in a relational database, which is near and dear to pretty much all of us these days, but really using it more as a graph store than a traditional relational database.
Okay, great. I'd say let's go to the, we'll pause on some of the questions now. I'd like to give you an opportunity to show the kind of front end.
Sure. Okay, so once again, what we're looking at on the screen is within your logged in access. You have, this is what only your authorized users see, but sharing out with the world, any of our subscribers can publish to what we call the CatalogIt hub. And this is sort of a CatalogIt hosted page where they can create their own sort of ability to display their own items. So here's an example of what that looks like. This is the Southern Forest Heritage Museum in Louisiana. You can see they've got a nice image here. They've published a bunch of different folders of their items. This is what it looks like. They can direct people directly to their own hub page. They can direct them into a particular folder, such as this Crowell Lumber Companies. Or if they want to point out a particular item here, they can use the URL up at the top here and direct people to look at a specific item here. And this is the data that they're allowing to be published to their site. So the CatalogIt Hub is an easy way for an institution to just get their stuff out there quickly to the world. Now, let's see, in the interest of time here, I'm going to just skip along kind of quickly here. Within CatalogIt, I mean, you also have the ability to search across all the classifications that are using CatalogIt. It's really kind of fun. So this is all the 100 or so, well, probably close to 200 entities that right now that are publishing to the hub. You can search across everything that they've got and by classification as well. So here we've got almost 126,000 photos published. If you're looking for an image of anything in particular, there's a good chance you might find it here amongst these 126,000 items that are being published. So again, in the interest of time here, I'll just move along kind of quickly. So besides using the CatalogIt Hub, our users can also subscribe and use our API to publish directly to their website. So for my friend Nik Honeysett here, I'm going to show an example. This is actually the old Police Cells Museum in Brighton, England.
Yes.
They're using our iframe integration to publish directly onto their website. This is essentially, that iframe, their hub page essentially, but projected onto their own website. So they're not directing people away. They've actually got their entries here. This is what the entries look like here. They can, the public can come and see and view the data that they're allowing to be shared about these items. So in addition to the iframe integration, as Howard mentioned, we have a great WordPress plugin. This is an example of how the WordPress plugin looks. This is actually on the website of the Chattanooga Historical Society. These are how they've designed their folders to look, so that you can see the plugin allows for a lot more customization. They've got their own font size, their own font, their own. They're displaying their folders much differently. When I click on one here, let's take a look. Portraiture, for example, these are the items in their portraiture folder. And when we look at one of these entries here, let's grab this one here. Okay, so this is the oldest citizen of Chattanooga. A little bit of text here and the data that they're being allowed to be published. You can actually click on the image and, of course, zoom in if you want to. Now, that is a great image. So they can watermark if they want to. They've chosen not to watermark their images there. And then if you've got the technical chops, you can use that API and build your own complete custom display. This is a nice example of that. This is the Vermont Historical Society. So they're publishing directly out of their CatalogIt account onto their own website with this custom display. And these are their folders. They've got a little bit of animation in here even. They move slightly when you hover over them. So let's open up one of these and see what they look like. Again, these are their entries. They don't look like CatalogIt entries at all, but this is powered entirely from their CatalogIt account. You can click, for instance, on this Geiger counter here, read about the Geiger counter, lots of data they're publishing. They even have a Wikipedia link that goes to the Wikipedia page for that particular Geiger counter. So that's what publishing, if you've got the chops, you can use that API and build your own custom display to extract that data out and put it on your own site. Howard, I'll hand it back over to you.
And what's really kind of neat about that is pretty much in near real time. As soon as you update something in CatalogIt and save it, it's pushed out and would show in this view here. So there's no kind of elaborate publishing process that you need to go through. If you have your stuff published, it gets pushed out. I'm not going to say in real time because CatalogIt is very much a queue-based system. So if there's a lot of work going on in the system, it may take a couple seconds for it to get out there, but it will get out there. We say in near real time.
That's pretty close to real time.
Yeah,
in
exactly.
museum speak.
Good enough for a CMS for sure. All right. The last two topics that we want to talk about are our cloud environments and some of our experience with getting data in and out. So in the sake of time, I will kind of move through this pretty quickly. But cloud environments. So the cloud environment is really near and dear to us. CatalogIt is what we call cloud native. It was really built with the cloud in mind, and we exploit the cloud to the fullest extent possible. I want to start by just kind of grounding us on what we mean by cloud. It's really the use of a network of remote computers that are accessed via the internet to store, manage, and process your data. I think, pretty much most of us know that, but that's what we mean by cloud here. The cloud is not new by any means. The cloud's been around for a good 15 years. Amazon first launched their AWS services in 2007 or 2006, sorry. And I first started using the cloud in 2007 when I was working at CBS, and I moved a big infrastructure that we had to the cloud. So I've been using the cloud for a long time, and once I went there, I really never looked back. So we want to quickly address some of the myths that we hear regularly about cloud environments. The first one being, oh boy, this is going to be a much greater security risk. I would beg to differ there. Cloud providers need to invest significantly in security. The biggest risk that a cloud provider has is a security breach. So our efforts to combat that, are really extensive. At CatalogIt, we really maintain a zero trust policy and controls that really, limit ingress into the system. And if someone were to breach the system, the amount of lateral movement that they can do. Kind of think of it as a prison. I mean, the prison has multiple layers of defense. You can think of the perimeter around the prison, but once you get into it, you gotta go through another layer of security. And then there are just multiple layers of security, and any good cloud provider is going to have that in place. The other thing, there have really been very few security breaches in the public cloud, and most of those breaches really are a result of misconfigurations of the services. And these misconfigurations can be fairly easily detected with a good security audit and penetration testing. I also want to say that security is very much a shared responsibility between the provider and the end user. Your provider should be providing multi-factor authentication support, and you should be using it. And they should require strong passwords, and you should be using that. And with all that, I just want to say you shouldn't really assume that your cloud provider is insecure, but that they are secure. But at the same time, you really shouldn't assume that they are insecure. You really need to do your homework to understand it and ask the tough questions, and they should be able to answer them. Another big myth that we hear is loss of control. Boy, I'm going to upload my data to the cloud, and I'm not going to have any control over it anymore. It's really essential that you understand upfront how you're going to get your data out. Your data being all of your data and all of your images. People will ask us, well, what's going to happen to my data if you go out of business? And I don't want to trivialize this, but the answer is pretty simple. You're going to get all of your data out, and you're going to move it to a new platform. That's what's going to happen if we go out of business. You're not going to lose your data. You're not going to lose control of it. Your biggest safety net is really being able to get your data out. Another myth that we hear regularly is the data is really much safer in my hands. So, but I can tell you firsthand. So you've got this nice 1 terabyte USB drive that you got your data stored in. But if the app that manages that data is no longer supported and no longer runs, you're not going to be able to get that data out. And we have dealt with migrations where that is the case. The other thing that we run into regularly, which is might be a bit surprising, is people don't have the credentials to their database. They're somehow encoded somewhere where they don't have access to them. They're integrated into the operating system, or the credentials that people have are not administrative level credentials. So so just because you have your data physically, on your desk or under your desk doesn't make it any safer or more secure. And if you're not backing that up regularly and you have some kind of catastrophic event, you're not going to be able to get to that data at all.
Howard, just to stop you there for a second, it's great to hear all that, the technical and security depth from you all, but with our short time we have left, just wanted to hear your final thoughts, and maybe we can hopefully take a question or two if time permits. So if there's anything else Dan and you or Howard want to share, now's the time.
All righty.
Well, I did see one other question I think is probably worth responding to, and that's just about how we migrate, how do we migrate data into CatalogIt? So, I mean, we migrate data all the time. Actually, Howard, you could probably address that more than I can. So somebody's asking about different kinds of systems, Proficio or TMS or Past Perfect. So.
Yeah, so the way we migrate data is we use our API to bring data in, partly, but primarily we bring it in via CSV imports. So our CSV import provides some kind of different representations in the cell that allows repeating data to come in. And structured data to come in. So CSV files are great for very kind of simple flat things, but they kind of get a little bit challenged when you have repeating structured data. So we've built some tools that allow us to augment how you represent things in a CSV. But the primary way of getting things into CatalogIt is via a CSV import. But we do a lot of pre-processing ahead of that to get the data in the right format to be brought into CatalogIt. And then, once all of your data is in there, we import all of your data, we import all of your images, and basically for that, we just need to have a clear connection between an image and its file name and how to match it up with the entry in CatalogIt. So there's a variety of different ways that we import data into CatalogIt depending on where it's coming from. If it's coming from a relational database like Proficio or TMS, it's really just a matter of pulling that data out, doing the right kind of manipulation and pre-processing ahead of time, get it into the CSV format that we require, and then we import it. I don't want you to think that it's one import. A complex system is going to comprise anywhere from 30 to 50 separate imports. Every piece of data is going to come in separately. Your people and organizations and materials and techniques and all that will come in individually, but they all get stitched back together. We support unique identifiers and understand the relationships between data and have the right tools in place to reconnect that during the import process.
Thanks, Howard. And just what's the install base that you have right now? Where are you in terms of numbers? I know you said 27 countries. How many actual systems?
Oh boy. Well, we have over 4,000 active accounts at this point, but of those 4,000 active accounts, probably 4,000 registered accounts. Of those, I would say around 1,000 might be active. And that's spread between museums, private collectors, organizations, and conservators. And then the number of actual subscriptions, Dan?
It's about 500 at this moment. At this moment, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And maybe a last question is, this is the dreaming of a new CMS. What's the future dream for CatalogIt and how it can serve its, the institutions that it supports?
What?
Well, I'll start by saying, our future dream, like I mentioned in the opening slide, is really, helping people, create engaging experiences to really connect with their community and engage the world with their collections. These things have, fabulous stories to tell. And documentation and managing your collections is a really, critical, important piece of it, but it's only half of really what we want you to do with your collections. We really want to help you put your collections to work, get them published, and really create engaging experiences with them. Younger generations really expect augmented experiences. They want to pick that basket up and rotate it in 3D. They want to turn it upside down and look at the start. And it's not only good for engaging, younger people, but for researchers, there are a lot of items that, really can't be handled because they're very delicate. And so, handling them once, taking really good, 3D images of them and bringing that stuff to life is really our vision of what we want to do.
Great. Okay, I'm going to call it. Dan, Howard, fantastic to see the product in action. I remember when I first talked to you about I've got this thing, I want to get into museums. So I'm very excited and pleased to see how far you've come along. Thanks to our attendees, really appreciate it. This is being recorded and we will post it and notify you across the regular channels. Next episode is in December. We have invited Collector Systems to talk about their system. And then unfortunately, Alex is having some technical difficulties. So I'm channeling my inner Alex here and announcing that we're going to do a couple of spin-off series in great Hollywood fashion. We're going to be talking about, this is for next year, we're going to be talking about DAMs, social media, content management systems, and more. So keep an eye out for those announcements. Dan, Howard, really appreciate it. Neal, really appreciate it. Alex, sorry you had a technical difficulty, and we'll be seeing folks again next month.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.